1843, a courtroom in Tennessee. A man named Stephen Haynes is standing trial, and the crime is a knife. 5 witnesses take the stand to describe it. 15 to 18 inches of steel. 2 of them swear it's a Bowie knife. The other 3 say, no, it's a Mexican pirate knife. 5 grown men, and they can't agree on what the thing even is. Doesn't matter. The jury convicts him anyway, under a law that made it a crime to carry a blade that so much as resembled a Bowie knife. He hadn't used it, hadn't drawn it. He'd carried it under his coat, and that was enough. Here's what the story leaves out. Haynes was no outlaw, and that knife was no outlaw's tool. It was the single most common thing a frontier man owned. Every trapper, every teamster, every farmer walking a dark road home carried steel like that, and nobody blinked. The record is plain as day. These weren't the weapons of criminals. They were the everyday carry of ordinary people who lived a long way from any help. So today I'm counting down 25 of them. 25 things a mountain man kept on his belt or in his pocket that would get you a fine, a felony charge, or a night in a cell if you carried them the wrong way today. And I want you to stay clear to number 1 for 2 reasons. Number 1 is the blade that started every single law we're about to talk about, and in 1844 a court came right out and said the Constitution itself protected a man's right to carry it. And when we land there, I'll tell you the one thing all 25 of these had in common. It isn't steel, it isn't lead. Most folks never guess it. I'm Roy. 7th generation on this ridge in the southern Appalachians. My people came here in the 1790s and never found a reason to leave. My grandfather raised me, and he kept a leather journal, a whole life's worth of the old ways copied out by lamplight. Near the back of it there's a list a good deal like this one, and beside a lot of the entries he'd penciled a little note. Can't carry this no more. That's half of what this channel is. And if you'd tap subscribe before we start, understand it isn't for me. It's that most of what lands on a list like this got pulled out of the light on purpose. And every one I dig back up takes some real work. Subscribe, and you'll be sitting here when I dig up the next one. You're going to want it. One rule before the first item, and I'll say it more than once because it matters more than anything else in this video. Weapon law in this country is not federal, and it is not tidy. It changes at the state line and sometimes at the city limit. None of this is legal advice. It's history, and it's the law as written, so you know exactly what to go read for your own state before you ever slip a single thing into a pocket. All right, from 25 down to 1. Number 25, the Barlow, a plain folding knife with a long bolster, named for the English family that made it, and by the 1700s it was the knife in every farm boy's pocket in the colonies. Here's the good news, and I'll lead with it. A plain folding Barlow is legal to carry just about everywhere in America today. Where people trip is blade length and lock type. A lot of states draw their line right around 3 inches for a concealed blade, and a few still treat any knife that locks open as a problem. So the tool least likely to bite you is also the one you most need to check the local number on. Hold that thought about blade length. It comes back with teeth further down. Number 24, the skinning knife. Short, curved, wickedly sharp, built for one job, and no frontier household was without one. A skinning knife has never been illegal to own because it's a tool, but carry that same blade concealed with the notion of defending yourself, and a lot of states stop calling it a tool and start calling it a dirk or a dagger. Same steel, different word. And the word is what carries the penalty. Sit with that, because the whole back half of this list turns on it. Number 23, the belt knife, and its sneaky cousin, the boot knife. A fixed blade worn open on the hip has been legal frontier gear since before there was a country. Slide that same knife down into your boot where nobody can see it, and you've crossed the exact line the law watches. Open on the belt, fine in a lot of places. Hidden in the boot, a charge. The blade never changed, only where you put it. Which raises the obvious question, and I'll answer it soon. What about a blade that's built to hide? Number 22, the straight razor. Every man shaved with one, and in a tight spot it doubled as the fastest edge in the room. As a grooming tool, a folding razor is legal nearly everywhere. Carry it and swing it as a weapon, though, and now you're looking at assault with a deadly weapon, which is a whole different animal in every state in the Union. Coming up, the tools that were never really tools at all. Number 21, the ice pick and the shoemaker's awl. Pure tools, both. An ice pick chipped your block before the electric box came along. An awl punched leather. Neither one is banned. But the courts are full of both showing up as weapons, and that's exactly why some states wrote their concealed weapon statutes broad enough to sweep in any sharp instrument carried with bad intent. The lesson keeps repeating. It's rarely the object. It's the carry and the intent behind it. Number 20, the belt hatchet. A small hand axe on your hip, half tool and half tomahawk, and the frontier ran on them. Legal as camp gear, right out in the open. Tuck it under a coat, though, and in plenty of states you've just concealed a deadly weapon, which is where this whole list takes its turn. All right, from here it changes. Everything up to now was a tool that a bad afternoon could turn into a weapon. From 20 down, we're into things that were built as weapons and dressed up to look like something else. Concealment. That's the feature the law hates most of all. And watch how fast the penalties start to climb. Number 19, the loaded walking stick, cousin to the Irish shillelagh. A stout blackthorn cudgel, and the fighting versions carried their weight up in the knob. A walking stick is legal. The moment it's built or altered to strike, several states fold it right into their bludgeon statutes. Number 18, the lead-loaded cane. And this one is not a maybe. Take an ordinary cane and pour lead into the head to turn it into a club, and in California you have just made what the statute calls, in these exact words, a leaded cane. It is named by name in Penal Code, Section 22,210, right beside the blackjack and the slungshot. Possession alone is what they call a wobbler out there, meaning a prosecutor can file it as a misdemeanor or as a felony up to 3 years. A plain cane, you're fine. Lead in the head, you're in the statute. Hold on to that section number. We are going to hear it again and again. Number 17, the fighting cane and the loaded riding whip beside it. There was a real gentleman's art to defending yourself with a cane, taught in cities on both sides of the ocean. Own it to walk with, and you're fine. Build it to strike, and depending on your state, you're back in the bludgeon column. And speaking of canes that aren't what they look like, number 16, the sword cane, a full blade hidden inside a gentleman's walking stick, and this one shows you how old this fight really is. The very first concealed weapon law in the whole United States, Kentucky, February 3, 1813, named the sword cane specifically, right alongside the pocket pistol and the dirk. Today, California bans it outright under Penal Code 20,510, and it's prohibited in a long list of other states, too. Coming up, the family of weapons the law names more often than any other. If you own any of the next handful, this is the stretch to pay close attention to. Here's your second gear change, and it's a big one. Everything from here down to number 8 is an impact weapon, a striking tool. And these are not tucked in some obscure footnote. These are the exact words legislatures reached for first, over and over, for 200 years running. Number 15, the billy club, a simple wooden bludgeon, and it's named in that same California section, 22,210. But here's a live one, and I'll be straight with you, because the law is genuinely moving. As recently as 2024, a federal court in the case Fouts versus Bonta ordered California to stop enforcing the billy club part of that statute, ruling that a plain stick a person can carry to defend himself is protected. The judge pointed out that most anybody from 8 to 80 could fashion one from a dowel rod. The rest of the list in that statute still stands. Just the billy came loose. That's how fast this ground shifts under your feet, and it's exactly why I keep telling you to read your own state's law fresh. Number 14. The blackjack, also called the sap. A short leather pouch weighted at the head with a bit of spring in the handle. In California, it's the very next word after Billy in that statute, and it did not come loose in that ruling. Still flat ban to possess. Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, and plenty more say the same. Number 13. The slapjack. Same idea as the blackjack, only flat and wide. A broad leather strap weighted flat inside. It swings a touch differently, but the law does not care about the nuance. It sits in the same prohibited lists as the sap, banned to possess in California and a good many other states. One family, one set of rules. Number 12. Sap gloves. Ordinary-looking leather gloves with powdered lead sewn into the knuckles. Legal in some states, banned as metal knuckles, or a related weapon in others, because the law looks at what a thing does, not what it looks like. Quick aside, then right back to it. There's a great deal more of this than fits in one sitting. Which items are legal in which state, how the old-timers actually made and used the honest tools among them, the whole tangled map of it. I finally sat down and put all of it into a book over on my site. This video is the short version. The book's the long one. The link is down below if you ever want it, and that's the last you'll hear of it from me. Now, number 11. The slingshot. The slingshot. Not a slingshot, not a slingshot with an end that you'd shoot a rock with. A slingshot is a weight on the end of a cord or a lanyard. Sailors made them, so did dockside toughs, and so it earned a bad name fast. It is named by name in statute after statute. That California section names it. Mississippi named it clear back in 1896. It is one of the most specifically outlawed objects in American history, and most people today have never once heard the word. Number 10. The poor man's version of it. A heavy padlock knotted into the corner of a bandana. Nothing to buy, nothing to build. And that's the very thing the law caught up to. It doesn't matter that it's a lock and a rag in your pocket. If it's rigged to swing as a weight on a line, a lot of those slingshot statutes are written broad enough to cover it. The object is innocent. The arrangement is what gets named. Number 9. The monkey's fist. That's the tight woven knot sailors tied around a weight to throw a heaving line across to the dock, and it's a genuine piece of maritime craft still tied today. Tie it around a steel ball and hang it off a lanyard, though, and you've built a slingshot by another name, and courts have treated it exactly that way. Beautiful knot, same legal trouble. Number 8. Brass knuckles, metal shaped to fit the fist and focus a punch. California bans them under Penal Code 21,810, and note this carefully. The law doesn't care whether they're brass at all. Steel, iron, even hard plastic knuckles fall under it. And it is not just California. A large share of states restrict or outright ban them, and it's the plain possession that's the crime, self-defense intentions and all. That one surprises people every time. Number 7. The knuckle knife, later famous from the trenches of the Great War as the trench knife. A blade with a brass knuckle grip built right into the handle. It stacks two banned features into one object, so wherever either a knife law or a knuckle law reaches, this thing gets caught twice over. Number 6. The push dagger. A short blade with a T-handle that sits between your fingers and punches out from a closed fist. It was prized on the riverboats and in the gambling houses, where a man wanted something he could hold without it looking like he held anything at all. Several states name the push dagger, or the push knife, specifically in their prohibited lists, and many more sweep it under dirk or dagger. Now we reach the blades that started this whole 200-year argument, and here's the part the record makes crystal clear and almost nobody talks about. These knives weren't banned because of some crime wave. They were banned because gentlemen kept killing each other in duels, and the reformers went after the tools to stop it. Kentucky lit the fuse in 1813. By the late 1830s, it was a wildfire across the South. Number 5. The Arkansas toothpick. A long, straight, needle-pointed dagger, sometimes a foot and a half of blade, made for the thrust. In 1837, Alabama laid a tax of $100 on every single Bowie knife or Arkansas toothpick sold or brought into the state. $100 then is about $2,600 in today's money. A tax that's steep isn't revenue. It's a ban wearing a nicer coat. Tennessee outlawed carrying one concealed the very next year. Number 4. And now we cross over from steel to powder, the pepper box. Before the revolver came along and solved the problem, gunmakers just bundled several barrels together, each with its own charge, turning by hand or by the trigger. Sharps built a tidy 4-barrel version, patented in 1849, in the small rimfire calibers. It was the concealable self-defense gun of the mid-century, right up until the revolver put it out of work. Number 3. The muff pistol, also called the vest pistol. Tiny little single or double-barrel guns a lady could tuck into a hand-warmer muff, or a gentleman into a waistcoat pocket. The entire design brief was one word: disappear. And that, precisely, is the feature modern law treats hardest of all. Number 2. The Derringer. Henry Derringer of Philadelphia, one R in his name, built a little muzzle-loading percussion pocket pistol starting around 1852. And it was so good and so widely copied that his name became the word for the whole class, spelled with 2 R's by everybody who knocked it off. Here's the one you already know. Even if you didn't know, you knew it. On the night of April 14, 1865, John Wilkes Booth carried a .44 caliber Derringer, about 6 inches long, into Ford's Theater and killed Abraham Lincoln with it. That exact pistol is on display at Ford's Theater right now, cared for by the National Park Service. One shot from a gun that fit in a coat pocket changed the whole country. After that night, the pocket pistol never once shook its reputation. And number 1, the blade that started every law we've talked about tonight, the Bowie knife. Jim Bowie's name on a broad, heavy fighting knife with a clipped point. And after the frontier duels of the 1820s and 30s made it famous, it became the most legislated against object of its entire century. Alabama taxed it. Tennessee, in the acts of 1837 and 38, made carrying one concealed a crime. State after state fell in line. And here's the payoff I promised you back at the start. In 1844, in the case Nunn versus State, the Georgia Supreme Court took up a law that banned the Bowie knife and the handgun and struck part of it down, ruling it violated the right to keep and bear arms. 1844. A court came right out and said the Constitution reached down and protected a man's right to carry that blade. The most feared knife in America and the highest court in the state said you had a right to it. So what did all 25 have in common? I told you it wasn't the steel and it wasn't the lead. Here it is. Every one of these belonged to the man who could not count on anybody else to keep him safe. No sheriff an hour's hard ride away. No help coming over the ridge. Just him and whatever fit in a pocket or hung off a belt. That's the thread running through the whole list. Not violence. Self-reliance. Carried into the one corner of life most of us have handed off completely. Our own safety. The knives and the powder are just where you can see it plainest. Now, who benefited when these faded out? Be careful right here because it is not a plot and I won't sell you one. 2 honest things happened. First, the reformers of the 1800s went after dueling and wrote broad laws to do it, and those laws outlived the duels by 150 years. Second, a whole legal industry grew up around the one vague word sitting in nearly every statute: concealed. Nobody schemed it in a back room. It's just how law piles up, faster than anyone ever clears it out. And if you've got a cane, a pocket knife, or a razor in a drawer at home, and you're suddenly wondering whether you're a criminal, breathe. You almost certainly are not. The line the law draws is about concealment and intent, and in a few cases the object itself. Knowing where that line sits in your own state isn't paranoia. It's just being the kind of person who reads the deed before he buys the field. So here's your one thing this week, and don't try to do all of it. Pick a single move. 1. This very evening, for nothing, pull up your own state statute on dirks, daggers, and prohibited weapons, and just read the list. 10 minutes. Now you know your own line, which is more than most folks carrying anything can say. 2. This weekend, spend $15 or $20 on a plain, non-locking folding knife with a blade under 3 inches and carry that instead of something that'll cost you a court date. Legal in nearly every corner of this country, and it'll do 90% of what any blade on this list ever did. 3. If you want to stick by the door, buy a real walking cane, $8 or $10 at any hardware store, and leave the lead out of the head. A stout stick you can lean on is legal. The instant you weight it, you've read yourself straight into a statute. Pick one. Start there. Now I want to hear from you, and I think you'll like this one. What did your grandfather carry? Everybody had one. The old man with the same worn Barlow in his pocket for 40 years. The little pearl-handled pistol your grandmother kept in the nightstand drawer. The walking stick nobody else was allowed to touch. Tell me down in the comments what it was and where your people were from. Whatever story gets the most folks chiming in, that's the one I take apart piece by piece, in a whole video of its own. And here's where I'm headed next. We spent this whole video on the things the law got its hands on. Next time, I want to go the other way entirely. The frontier tools that are still perfectly legal, still sitting forgotten in barns and drawers, and still flat-out beat the $60 version they sell you at the store today. The ones nobody ever bothered to ban, because nobody could figure out how to sell you a new one every year. That's the next one, and you don't have to go hunting for it. The way these things tend to work, there's very likely another one of mine sitting right there on your screen already, picked out just for you. Go on and give it a look. I've got a feeling it's one you'll be glad you watched. Take care of your own, and I'll see you up here at the next one.